Thanks everybody for joining us in the session this morning. It's really fun to be with you here in New Orleans. I've always wanted to come visit the city, and it's fantastic to have the chance to do so. I've been really looking forward to this conference. I think we're at a very exciting and interesting point in tourism management and marketing. And so conferences and events like this are always a fantastic way to get to know not only other practitioners of this field, but exchange ideas, see what's working, what might we be able to bring back home and apply in our destinations and our contexts. So I want to talk today a little bit about I want to talk about partnerships. I want to talk about data and the use of data in forming and executing those partnerships, ultimately with the end goal of attracting more people to our cities, our destinations, wherever they might be. And looking through the attendees of this conference, there's a nice mix of people, not only from across North America, but a few people joining us from internationally as well. And so, as William said, we've focused on building ReviewPro, which is a listening technology that looks at what travelers are saying in terms of individual establishments, whether they're businesses or places of interest, and processes that feedback. And so we've been doing that for the last 6 years around the world, primarily in the hospitality industry, but we've had a number of destination managers and marketers around the world start to ask us, what does this look like for tourism marketing and management? And so very interesting to sort of be at this point in time where we have the convergence of so many new technologies, but also different traveler preferences, and we're seeing more and more of an evolution in the perspective of how people, from a management perspective, how tourism executives are managing the promotion of their destinations. I think David gave a fantastic overview. In Ontario and in Canada, there's more and more of a push towards integration and collaboration between a DMO, the mayor's office, marketing, and all of these different constituents, so it's less of an isolated silo-based approach and more people sharing insights and resources and working together to the end goal, which is to attract more people to the destination and spend more money there. So I want to first kind of set the stage in terms of the opportunity that we see with digital media and data. I think for many people rather, thinking about destination management marketing, it's a little daunting at first kind of glimpse, right? Because you have these cities and these destinations that have so much going on. There's rich histories, different industries are kind of based there, so many different storylines of what could be promoted, that it's often this question, what deserves our attention? What should we promote? What should we highlight? What makes sense, right? And with all that going on, it's really beyond the scope of any organization or even a very, very talented large team of people to fully capitalize on that, right? So I think this is where we start to see some of the elements that Kareem talked about around the power of the crowd, or the collective intelligence of everyone. You think about, depending on the jurisdiction that you have, there might be hundreds of thousands or even millions of people living in your city or in your state or in your province. And then, probably several multiples of that of people coming through. I think I was talking to someone earlier today, there's more than 9 million people a year visit New Orleans. And you know the numbers for your cities and destinations, but this is a massive, massive resource, right? Because people who live in a city or the neighborhood, they know the neighborhood, right? They know what's good, they know what recommendations to make. And then if you think about all the people coming through, you're getting fresh perspectives. And so rather than sort of having this mentality of thinking, let's have one expert or even a small group of experts be the definitive guides to our destination, I want to encourage you to think about how do we tap into the collective intelligence of everybody and collect all of this feedback that's being generated and use it. Okay, so of course I don't need to go through all the statistics of the increase in social media usage and sharing. We're all carrying around a camera in our pocket, right? Connected to thousands of people, and because we're a data company, we see the exponential rise where there's more social data created in the past year than the past 5 years combined. You know, there's been untold number of studies that kind of quantify the details of that. But my point is more just everybody is empowered now where they can record stuff, so you have everyone eating at a restaurant can be kind of like an amateur kind of food critic and someone who's going to talk about that experience and so on and so forth across your city, each of the different areas of interest and touch points. So you have this happening, and I think as tourism managers and marketers, the big challenge is how do we sift through all that information and kind of come up with the gold, right? So there's good stuff there, but if we were to do just a basic keyword search for New Orleans or Cleveland or Chicago, there's a lot of crap in there, right? There's a lot of stuff it's either irrelevant or it's businesses that have nothing to do with tourism. Or it's very, very, it's not the highest quality of content if you just do a broad-based keyword search, right? And so there is gold in there, but the challenge becomes, first of all, what are we trying to mine out of that? Is it original content? I think Green did a great example of that in Cleveland, so I'm not going to go through that sort of approach, but there's that sort of model. If you're looking for research, if you're trying to understand what are the big drivers, what's generating conversation in our city, that can be something. Again, as these different city organizations become more interconnected, a number of the projects that we've worked on have included people from economic development agencies, from business associations, different industry associations, and so on. And each of those stakeholders or constituents wants something else from the data, right? So depending on where you currently are, what organization you're working with, there's going to be different answers that you need to have. And so that kind of taking a step back from that, thinking about the methodology for processing this incredible amount of feedback and finding the gold will be contingent on your answer for that. But I want to keep today's talk very much focused on sort of collective intelligence for tourism marketing, and specifically the attraction of people to a destination, right? So how do we leverage all of this incredible content that's out there to guide that specifically, right? And I would propose to you that it really is all about going to where people already are. I love the case study of Cleveland because there was an incredible amount of data. I think she mentioned something like 280,000 tweets being tagged with the hashtag. Other projects that we've worked on, even in large cities, if they haven't quite seen the same results. So in our experience, at least, it's a little inconclusive if you have a hashtag-based campaign, if people will use it. I think we've absolutely seen some amazing examples of that, but I'm from New York and I've seen campaigns down there where you think of a city as big as New York, the official tourism campaign over the past 3 months had something like 200 photos posted, right? So it's not, people when they're posting stuff to Instagram and Twitter, they're probably not, 99% of them are not thinking about your tourism marketing campaign. They're just going to be posting photos for their friends, to look cool, what have you. And you think about Twitter or any other sort of digital sharing site, the same is going to be true, right? So where are they, right? Where are you getting clean, structured feedback that you can use to answer some business questions? So I would, from what we've seen, online review sites are a big contributor to that. So if you think about a museum in your city or even the airport or something like this, there's probably thousands of pieces of feedback where they're giving a quantitative star rating, along with unstructured text feedback, right? So this is true across your city or across your state or province. Every neighborhood, every type of industry, every coffee shop, restaurant, tourism attraction, because Facebook and Google and other sites have been very aggressive in soliciting that feedback. On my Facebook feed on my phone, I'll often see little pop-ups saying, hey, you visited this place, can you tap here and leave a rating for it, right? So it's very much kind of built into how we use these technologies. So if you think about it, for looking across all the neighborhoods in your city, there's absolutely an incredible amount of structured, clean feedback on these review sites, right? So it gives you a perspective into everything anyone has ever said about any establishment in your location, which is pretty mind-blowing. it gives you insight into what people like and dislike about each business or each place of interest. So, not only on the micro level, but more on a macro level as well. So, if you're looking for the best coffee shops, again, there's a lot of value to having independent experts identify what captures their attention. But it's also really interesting to look at the collective intelligence of everyone in that neighborhood, or that everyone that's been to a certain place in your destination. What do they like best, right? Across everything, what's the collective sentiment around what's interesting. From a marketing perspective, this gives you an incredible opportunity to kind of really zero in on what guests or visitors to your city love. And so, again, kind of freeing you up from this reliance on having to be the definitive expert on every neighborhood in your city. Through data analysis, you can understand, here's the top attractions. Obviously, in most cities, there's a handful of attractions that are very, very well known. And so you can get more insight into that, but you can also understand some of the more obscure places that would be very time-consuming or difficult to constantly track if it weren't for some type of data analysis. Right? From an editorial or website or digital content perspective, this also enables an incredible amount of precision targeting. And so one of the things that we've seen is that for PR professionals, for example, in destination marketing organizations, one of the big criteria that they're measured on is the number of kind of organic stories that they're able to create, right? So if you think about different bloggers or media personalities, what you could do with data analysis is quickly apply some parameters in terms of who their audience is, and then understand what does their audience say about my city and how can I create a story based on that, right? Or even just from a kind of a website perspective. So I was talking to a major international gateway city organization a couple of weeks ago, and they were planning a new website that would have an international component, right? So Europe was a big feeder market for them, Scandinavia in particular, and so what they wanted to do is understand for Swedish visitors, what's capturing their attention, what are they talking about? The same thing for a lot of destinations. Chinese visitors have exponentially grown over the past couple of years. And so in LA and San Diego and San Francisco, there's a lot of attention around, what are they liking, what are they disliking, whether it's the airport, the first arrival experience. How can we capture all of the feedback from those visitors and use it to better understand them? And so from coming back to a content perspective, it would allow you to educate people a little bit more. If there's if you have the top 5 kind of complaints, and then work on that to, as you promote the destination, maybe address those. If there's some misconceptions, clear those up. But that amount of kind of precision targeting is very, very difficult to do with traditional formats like surveys on a comprehensive or exhaustive basis. And so it's really interesting, the options for precision marketing communications. And then from a kind of a business relations standpoint, again, I'm aware there's a diverse number of kind of organizations represented here, but if you think about a DMO, a lot of times there's a membership component to that, especially in North America. And so for your head of membership services, showing value to those people for renewals, maybe different, if you have a tiered membership program, there's a massive opportunity here to share more insights with this data, right? So I'm a big believer in travel, being really comprised of all the different experiences and touch points you have when you visit, right? It might be the coffee shop where I go first thing in the morning, and maybe I go to a gym class or go on a tour. It's really my perception of Denver or San Diego is going to be based on all those touch points, right? So, membership or non-membership aside, it's in the interest of destination managers to really empower their local businesses so that they can see what are the complaints, how can they improve at a micro level, right? And so, again, kind of being pragmatic, there are membership considerations in many organizations. So that could be something, I guess, just practically to weave into that, where if you're looking to add value, some of this data can be incredible for doing that. So it was mentioned a couple of times earlier this morning, but we're seeing more and more around the world where destination managers, their job isn't so much to be definitive experts on their location, it's really to be sort of a clearinghouse of all kinds of information that's coming through, right? So, listen, process, and share is something that we advocate. And, first you have to be aware of what's out there, processing it, again, to kind of filter this down to the gold and separate all the noise from what really matters, and then sharing it with the right people. And this is huge because there's so much digital content out there. Given the attention spans of all the stakeholders that you need to influence, you need to present them with very, very filtered, actionable insight that they can use in their businesses. If I'm a small business owner, or if I'm a hotel manager, I need to see a couple bullet points of what I need to fix, right? And so the more that we can move towards this process format of sharing insight for action for everybody, the better it is. So that's sort of partnership mentality of where we think about all these different business owners or association leaders as partners and participants in the overall tourism strategy, the better it is for everyone. And so let's talk about some specifics of how that happens. So I've been talking about kind of guest feedback and intelligence in kind of a generic sense. How we do it at ReviewPro is we're looking at 160 structured review sites like Facebook, Google, TripAdvisor. So we kind of have this fire hose of data coming in. And then we also, in some cases, have more traditional surveys. And so this might be in a visitor center. There's different places that can be located, but both kind of online digital feedback and direct feedback being collected. And what we do is we do this for all hotels, all the hospitality sector, for restaurants, for museums, airports. Again, big tech companies like Google and Facebook have made a real push toward collecting this sort of structured feedback. And so that means that there's been an exponential growth in that area across all verticals, right? Whereas maybe 5 years ago, it was mostly hotel reviews on TripAdvisor. Now that's expanded a lot to a lot of different other sites and a lot more depth of data. So with that being said, I think hospitality is really a key foundational pillar in as you think about partnering with local businesses, and that's for a number of factors. I think first off, the hospitality experience is really foundational to someone's impression and how they experience your destination, right? So if you think most people when they first touch down in a city, get off the plane, they'll get to the hotel, drop their bags, and those first couple of moments of being welcomed, if I'm treated really well, then I'm gonna be in a good mood. Maybe I just like have this, I don't know, I got a room upgrade, or like the hotel's better than I thought it was. And so it puts me in a really good frame of mind, right? And that's going to color the rest of my experience in that city. And so I think there's that, and then also hotels have a unique capacity of sort of being a home base for people while they're traveling, right? And hotels and other accommodation types. I know that's a rapidly changing environment, but wherever someone is staying, that sort of becomes their base, right? And the proximity of that stay to restaurants or attractions is typically highly influential on the sort of businesses that they'll interact with, right? So there's that. There's also sort of the pragmatic details that for most destinations, especially across North America, hotels are one of, if not the biggest economic contributor to their operating budgets. So they're a very, very key stakeholder to not only support and make sure that they're happy and you're delivering the best possible set of services and insights to, but also thinking of them as partners. Whether there's meeting space. Obviously, this has been going on far prior to digital. But again, because we have an incredible amount of data, and especially because hotels and hospitality and accommodation has typically the most structured data set of any type of business. There's online travel agencies, of course, like Booking and Expedia and hotels that are becoming more and more persistent in collecting feedback, right? And so because they have the email address, they can send a follow-up survey and reminders. And so we've actually seen the amount of data on those booking sites grow at several multiples of traditional review sites. And so all that to say, there's a massive amount of structured, clean data for the hotel sector. So if we think about kind of quick wins and dipping our toe in the water in terms of providing data to partners, hotels make a really interesting sort of first step. We've taken a little step back beyond this and looking at more of a macro level. We've participated in a number of research studies with the UN World Tourism Organization over the past year and really examined the influence of consumer-generated content and reviews specifically on decision-making processes. And it's a little bit, might be a bit small on the screen here, but this research was conducted in Europe, but found that for traditional kind of countrywide rating schemes, whether a hotel's a 3 or 4-star hotel, there's a certain amount of confidence. But if you look at online reviews and internet consumer-generated content, that actually has the highest level of trust and reliability among travelers. And this research has been replicated in different other areas of the world as well. So we're seeing, I think, on a macro level and global level, a big or an increasing recognition of consumer-generated content, the role it plays in the decision-making process. On the social media side, there's been Facebook and Google and others have commissioned research that shows people will typically look at dozens of different travel websites, even review websites specifically, before they make a purchase process. And so this becomes a vital factor when it comes time to not only control and kind of manage your reputation as a destination brand, but also think about some of how we can use this from a data perspective. So I want to share with you a couple of case studies briefly in terms of how we've worked on this. The first is from Australia. There's an organization called Star Ratings Australia that's sort of a combination of a number of other associations in Australia. Membership-based organization performs quality inspections. And so you can see here, Damien is the general manager of the organization, and he talks about accommodation being foundational to the overall visitor experience, right? And having quality products is really vital as you think about destination management, and that's where it comes back to thinking about partnerships with local business owners is vital, because if there's poor customer service or experience on the product level, whether it's at a restaurant or a hotel, that reflects negatively on the overall experience of the destination, right? So, he talked a little bit about travelers still valuing sort of that professional inspection process. I think that's a little more prevalent abroad than it is here in the US, but sort of, I guess, like this idea of a professional expert, of course, there's a lot of value to that. And the consumer-generated content doesn't replace that, but it's a good supplement to it. And so again, like sort of as a membership organization, one of the challenges that they face, as any membership organization does, is renewals of their annual contracts with the businesses, right? So they have a service that they've done for years around inspection. That business model, people understand. But these hotels are also saying, hey, look, we're very aware that when people are making their decisions, they're not just going and looking at your star rating. They're going to online review sites. They're shopping on sites like Booking and making purchases there. And oftentimes, the online review is going to be one of the last factors in terms of that final decision before they click the purchase button, right? So as an organization, they were sort of struggling with this, right? How do we continue to stay relevant? How do we continue to demonstrate value? And so what they ended up doing is purchasing our online review analytics dashboard for all of their members. And so the idea behind this is they wanted every hotel in Australia that was a member of their organization to be listening to what customers are saying across the web. They wanted the hotels to be able to see what's working, what's not working. We collaborated with them to create a whole educational program where there was webinars and guides and case studies. Education is a really, really key part as you think about partnering with your local businesses. For many of them, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about how digital travel is, or how travel is purchased digitally. And David talked about this a little bit this morning where he was staying at that inn, and the innkeeper had no idea that the money that she was paying wasn't really at all connected with people booking. And so that happens across all different types of digital activity. It's not, I guess it creates this really interesting opportunity as a destination manager to think, how do we organize resources so that we can educate our local businesses and everyone wins. So this was a 5-year multi-stage project. In the future, they plan to display some of these consumer reviews on their website. They're going to have contests and conduct different media and PR activities around that. Another project we worked on was on the island of Bermuda. So the Bermuda Tourism Authority recently went through an organizational restructuring. Their government decided to invest a significant amount of new money into branding for the island. And Bermuda is a gorgeous place. It's sort of separated from the rest of the Caribbean, and it's actually a relatively short flight from the top feeder markets in New York and Boston. And so, they were kind of thinking about, we have this new investment, we have this opportunity to sort of a blank slate to talk about how do we position the island to our top inbound markets. And so they began a project with us and Ernst & Young and started to look to see across all these different other Caribbean islands and other destinations, people who want a weekend trip that's warm and sunny, flying out of Boston or New York when it's freezing, what other options do they have, right? And so what they decided to do is actually look at all the online reviews for the hospitality sector in all of these different destinations. And so we compared Bermuda with Barbados and a number of different destinations along the eastern seaboard, and Jamaica and the Dominican Republic. There's about 12 or 13 different destinations they benchmarked against, and they looked at each tier of, again, this was a focused project around hospitality, but kind of imagine each different tier of your local businesses. In their case, they had about 35 hotels on the island. It's a very, very small place, but they wanted to understand the luxury experience, kind of the resort experience, the 4-star hotel experience, and then compare those with all of the other destinations. And so for the different segments, they had a very persona-based, segment-based marketing strategy. They wanted to understand, what do we have to offer, and how does that stack up from what visitors are saying. And so we looked at all these different factors. Service, turns out people like the service that they experience in Bermuda's hospitality sector. It came out #1 across hundreds of thousands of online reviews versus competitors. And so that became one of the key cornerstones of their rebranding process, because it wasn't just a bunch of people sitting in a boardroom and saying, hey, we have great service, come to Bermuda and experience our friendly people. This is what consumers had said quantitatively differed from other islands. And so I think this is where there's a lot of different ways where you can set up dashboards like this. They asked us to build a ratings dashboard because you don't need to rely on quarterly surveys or anything like that. With online reviews, this stuff is constantly coming in. And so after they made the changes, they were able to track as time went on, and as they educated their hospitality sector, they could see what is this doing in terms of overall guest satisfaction and how's that trending. So, and they also gave access to all of their hotels to have access to kind of a reporting dashboard. So it was a very integrated, multi-level partnership with their business operators to go through this branding. It wasn't just coming up with a new slogan, it was actually making substantial changes so that when you go there and you stay at a hotel, you'll have a better experience. And so these are just a couple of the images in terms of what they had access to, kind of an overall quantitative score, again, because many review sites have that sort of star rating, so they could track overall satisfaction, how that trended. They had dashboards where they could search by keyword, do different types of analysis. We do also processing of written text, and so we can look at the concepts that people are talking about, what's grabbing attention, what's going well, what's not going well. And so that's just really what I want to kind of leave with you is this whole idea of thinking about this as a partnership, and a partnership on many different levels. We heard earlier today about between the mayor's office and the Office of Economic Development and all these different constituents. Depending on the type of organization that you represent, that partnership mix will look different. But building those coalitions of organizations, sort of with your peer organizations, if you will, but also thinking about partnerships with the business community, with places of interest, whether it's a beach or a mountain, all the people that are behind or associated with that, and then also partnerships with travelers. And there's many different ways to do this. I think we talked about kind of some of them around education. There's opportunities we've seen. Many organizations work on building content libraries in terms of best practices. This is great because there's so much information online, and a lot of guides to how to succeed on this site and that site. But if you can really create something that's based on your local market, and you can interview local business owners, they get a sense that this isn't just written from some person halfway around the world that doesn't really understand our market conditions. And you get a sense of, if you interview some of the top performing businesses from a digital standpoint, you say, hey, I know this person down the block, and they're doing this, and this is working for them, and here's why it's working. And so that's incredibly powerful. I think support with data and insights is also a quick win, again, because there's technology out there that can synthesize all this information. You create stuff like, we get a lot of requests for kind of scorecarding, and maybe it's, as part of like a quarterly review or annual renewals process, you send a basic PDF report to your members if you're a membership-based organization. But thinking about what are the data points that we can extract and send out to add value, again, point out what's relevant to them and help them with that. We've actually, on a tactical level, we've seen a lot of nice traction with a program some sort of recognition around going through the training, and then if you complete all the training, you do X, Y, and Z, you get some sort of certificate. It might seem kind of simple and trade, but in terms of ensuring that high numbers of people are going through this process, that's something that we've actually seen work quite well in different areas. And then also, again, this will depend on the complexity of the website you have for your organization. But I'm a huge believer in kind of creating healthy competition through transparency. And it's one thing to say as an organization, we want to improve our service operation, or we want to get better care of people visiting the destination. It's another thing to empower your businesses to do that, and then have some kind of a public-facing scorecard in terms of how well they're doing, right? And so we do a lot of work around sort of, again, aggregating all this content. We have widgets that are comprised of all the reservation verified ratings on sites like hotels.com and Booking. We take all that data, typically hundreds of thousands of pieces of content for a city, and then create widgets for each business. And so you can understand, or rather the consumer, the visitor can understand, here is the collection of ratings from across the web that I can see on my site. And if you have a booking component to your website, of course, this is even more powerful because you're able to typically increase conversion rates. People have all the information they need to make a booking then and there. So this is, however you do it, whether it's an internal kind of report or it's a public-facing consumer report, this can be really interesting to explore. So yeah, that's basically, I'm again very cognizant that there's different sort of organizations represented here, but I would just really encourage you to be aware of this massive change that's happening as we're all carrying around phones and leaving ratings and online reviews and posting stuff. It's interesting from a social media perspective. There has been and there will be more conversations on kind of social networks like Twitter and Facebook. But adjacent to that, and maybe even more important for some of your stakeholders, is structured review content. And thinking about processing that in a way that not only helps people, depending on the economics of your business, it might help with membership and renewals, but ultimately kind of rallies the business community around collectively taking better care of your visitors is something that we've seen is extremely powerful.